Now, the latest with the ITV Lunchtime News.
Killer nurse Lucy Letby will spend the rest of her life behind bars. The 33-year-old received a whole life order with no chance of parole, but she refused to appear in court today to hear statements from her victims' families, one describing her crimes as a sadistic abuse of power.
You acted in a way that was completely contrary to the normal human instincts of nurturing and caring for babies.
Also this lunchtime, England's Lionesses are coming home. A loss to Spain, but a win for women's sport. So how can we build on their success?
It's just amazing for the women's game in general. And I think we're already seeing it attract so many young girls to the sport.
Storm Hilary brings chaos to California. Streets are flooded, homes plunged into darkness. And after becoming the queen of stops, the campaign to get goalie Mary Earp shirts in the shops.
I just think that it's disgraceful. It's got to the point now where I think they need to apologise for the upset that they've caused.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. Child killer Lucy Letby will spend the rest of her days in prison after receiving a whole life sentence for the murder of 7 babies and attempted murder of 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital. At sentencing today, the judge described her actions as premeditated, calculated and cunning. He said the majority of her victims suffered acute pain after what she did to them. But Letby refused to appear in the dock to hear that or the emotional impact statements from the families of her victims, one describing how their world shattered when they encountered evil disguised as a caring nurse. Another saying her absence today was a final act of wickedness. The Prime Minister has described Letby as cowardly, and there are renewed calls for the law to be changed. Ian Woods has been following the case.
A prison van was seen arriving at the court complex, but there was no sign of Lucy Letby in the courtroom as parents gave their victim impact statements. Her absence has caused further distress. The mother of baby E, who was murdered, and baby F, who survived, said,
"The disrespect she has shown the families and the court show what type of person she is. We have attended court day in and day out, yet she decides she has had enough and stays in her cell. Just one final act of wickedness from a coward."
Oh, Lucy, is it?
Lucy Letby was finally arrested in 2018, 3 years after the first suspicious death of a child in the Countess of Chester Hospital. It would be another 5 years before she was convicted, and following a trial which lasted 10 months. The judge, Justice Goss, made his sentencing comments as if she was in the courtroom.
You acted in a way that was completely contrary to the normal human instincts of nurturing and caring for babies, and in gross breach of the trust that all citizens place in those who work in the medical and caring professions. You specifically targeted twins and latterly triplets. The great majority of your victims suffered acute pain as a result of what you did to them. They all fought for survival. Some, sadly, struggled in vain and died.
The judge ordered that Letby be given a copy of all the impact statements from parents, including from the mother of baby A, who died, and baby B, who survived.
Our minds are so traumatised that it won't let us remember the night when you killed our child. You thought it was your right to play God with our children's lives.
The mother of baby C, one of the 7 children who died, said,
"Knowing now his murderer was watching us during these traumatic hours is like something out of a horror story. I blame myself entirely for his death, and I still live with the guilt I couldn't protect him in pregnancy and his short life."
The parents of one child who spoke to ITV News ahead of sentencing had this to say.
But it's not going to do justice no matter what. She's taken lives. She's tried to take other babies' lives. So whatever sentence she gets is not going to be enough. It will be justice, but it won't be enough.
I'm hoping she will never be released. Otherwise, she's a danger to everyone.
They got their wish.
Lucy Letby, on each of the 7 offences of murder and the 7 offences of attempted murder, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. Because the seriousness of your offences is exceptionally high, I direct that the early release provisions do not apply. The order of the court, therefore, is a whole life order on each and every offence, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
But so many questions remain. Why did she do it? And an inquiry will look into why she wasn't stopped and caught earlier. Ian Woods, ITV News.
Our correspondent Sangeeta Lau has been following the Letby trial and was in court in Manchester this morning, from where she joins us now. Sangeeta, an incredibly emotional day for the families.
It really has been. This morning they shared their impact statements to the court, and one mother whose son was murdered by Letby talked about the grief of losing her firstborn. She said, "I would open his memory box. I would smell his smell. I would touch his hand and footprints," which she said she would wear around her neck because they'd been turned into a necklace. But she said she couldn't wear that necklace for years when she heard Lucy Letby had been arrested, because it was Letby who took those hand and footprints. Many others have shared heartbreakingly their own guilt, that they thought maybe they should have spotted something. One mother, who gave birth to triplet boys, said she thought she might have passed down an infection or an illness to them when 2 of her sons died. We now know Lucy Letby murdered them. Well, this afternoon, the judge sentenced Lucy Letby to a whole life sentence. He said that early release provisions don't apply, and he said this was a cruel, calculated and cynical campaign of child murder. And he said that to a packed courtroom, but there was one person missing. Lucy Letby wasn't in the dock. She refused to come out of her cell. And in the last few minutes, we've heard from the Crown Prosecution Service, who say today's sentence means Letby will never again be able to inflict the suffering she did while working as a neonatal nurse. And now, as the truth of what Letby did has been exposed, we know she murdered 7 children and attempted to murder 6 others. Children who should be in school, who should be leading ordinary lives, and which parents have shared what Letby took from them today. One mother whose son was murdered by Letby said, "I think about what his voice would have sounded like, what he would have looked like now." She said, "I wonder who he would have been."
All right, Sangeeta in Manchester, thank you. Well, the judge in this case has said they don't have the legal power to force a defendant to attend a sentencing. Courts around the country say more and more defendants are refusing to do so. Our political reporter, Jasmine Cameron-Chilishi, joins us now from Westminster. And Jasmine, the families in the Lucy Letby case are not the first to call for a change in the law, are they? So what's been the government's response?
That's right, Lucrezia. So under current guidelines, courts do have some resources to compel criminals to attend their sentencing hearings. But following the high-profile murders of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Bell and the law graduate Zara Alina, where the defendants in question didn't attend the sentencing hearings, opposition parties and campaigners have called for tougher laws on this issue. Now, the government has committed to doing so, but the big question has been over when new legislation can actually take effect. So earlier this year, when the Prime Minister was in Japan for the G7, he refused to clarify whether any new legislation could come into effect before the next general election. We also heard from him earlier this morning where he committed to changing the law, but again didn't really give clarity on timings. Now, interestingly, some reports over the weekend have suggested that the Prime Minister is very keen to get this into the King's speech and lay it before Parliament before Christmas. Now, officials have confirmed to me this morning that this is being discussed at the top of government. There's also a question about what any change in the law looks like practically. So say, for example, if you force defendants to attend the sentencing hearings, what happens if they're disruptive or disrespectful to the families? How much force can actually be used to get people into the room? And of course, any change in the law will ultimately take months or years, and that may provide little comfort to families of the victims in the meantime, who will be denied the opportunity to voice the impact of the crimes to the perpetrator in court.
All right, Jasmine, in Westminster, thank you. You can, of course, follow developments on this story on our website, itv.com/news, and on our streaming platform, ITVX. Now on to the day.